am Supreme, and today's Astro Oracle investigation will be on 19-year-old Kadin Black of Wrightsville, York County, Pennsylvania. Okay, Kadin Black was a 19-year-old who was last seen December the 18th, 2022. Okay, today is July the 10th, 2025. Okay, Kadin Black has not been found. Okay, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you'll be notified when I drop these investigations. Okay, having some issues with my protection candle, but however, I'm such a high-ranking oracle. I do all my prayers. Trust me, the protection is all through and over me. Okay, whether this candle is lit or not, but I do like when it is lit because it just adds, it just puts wood in the fire. Okay, but I'm already on fire, so the fire protects me. Okay, so I will be getting another candle if I can't seem to fix what's going on down in here. I can't seem to get that piece where I want it so it can stay lit, but that's okay. Okay. But I do have my zodiac candle lit so we can tap into the etheric realm. Okay. I am always protected one way or the other. Okay. Now, Kadin Black, this is a very interesting case. I've been watching videos on it, podcasts on it. I've been online researching information and things of that nature. Okay, so I'm going to go down a timeline. Okay, as I'm shuffling the deck, all of my decks that I'm going to be using for this investigation are pre-shuffled in his energy during my rituals before I log on. Okay, so Kadin Black from Wrightsville, Pennsylvania. Okay, he was last seen December 18th, 2022. Now, Kadin Black was living with another family in the same neighborhood as he was living with his dad. Him and his parents got separated, was whatever. He was living with his mom, but then he later moved in with his father. And him and his father got into some altercations and they had a fallout. So Kadin moved in with a friend's family. Okay, a friend of his family that lives in the same neighborhood, a couple of doors down from his dad. Okay, so it was there that Kadin was last seen on the 18th. Okay, they said his phone pinged, was connected to the Wi-Fi that day. Okay, whatever happened to Kadin after that day, nobody knows. Nobody seems to know. But we're going to go down this timeline. Okay, and y'all already know I'm going to get down to the bottom of it. Okay, so there was a planned event that was going to take place at his dad's house. Because, you know, it was the holidays. It was around the time on the holidays when Kadin was missing. This was December 18th, 2022. Okay, now when Kadin failed to show up at his dad's house for the every Sunday, they got together every Sunday. Although him and his dad had a fallout, Kadin was in love with his dogs, and his dogs still stayed at the dad's house, which was a couple of doors down from the friend that Kadin was staying with. And his family. So Kadin will still come over to his dad's house every Sunday and do the regular Sunday rituals with the dog, take the dog out, you know, stuff. And I'm quite sure he had a lot of interactions with his dad, you know, regular, normal, detached, family oriented. Your dad, I'm son, this and that. I know we had a fallout, but I came over to, you know, no friction or whatever, you know, and then he went back to his friend's house because they knew they could not live together during that time because of this friction. Understandable. It happens every day, right? So, Kadin failed to show up, okay, that Sunday, because that was a Sunday, December 18th, 2022, was a Sunday. That was the day that Kadin was supposed to show up at his father's house, okay, but he didn't, okay? So that's where things went left, okay? Now, the police say that there may be foul play involved coming from the friend's family. We're going to find that out. I pulled the charts of Kadin's birth And I pulled the alignment of December 18th, 2022, which was the last day he was seen. So I know where the planets were when Kadin was born, and I know where the planets were the day he was last seen. Okay, and I'm going to do the mathematics on the relationships between these planets, and we're going to paint a picture of what most likely happened to Kadin Black. And we're going to get down to the bottom of it, and I'm going to pull a card, and that's going to pull an oracle chart, and that's going to close us out. All right. So once again, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you'll be notified when I drop my investigations. Okay. Now, Kadin deposited his whole paycheck, okay, in the bank Friday, December 16th. I'm not quite sure where he worked at. Okay. December 16th was that Friday. Okay. However, ever since, no money has been touched from the last time he deposited that money in the bank. None of that money has been touched to this day. Okay? All his belongings were left behind. Okay? At the friend's family's house that he was staying with. Okay? Including his phone. So they had a lot of evidence to work with, especially the phone. Searching text messages and things of that nature to kind of find out what may have led up to this disappearance, any contacts or anything like that. It was said that there were things deleted out of that phone. Of course, that's why they felt like this is foul play. Duh, right? So, why would things be deleted if this was an innocent disappearance, or he innocently stepped out the house and just may not have came back, but stuff was deleted even before they knew he was coming back or whether he would ever come back? Things were deleted. Why were they deleted? So that's all the information that we have on Kadin. Other than that, his mom talked about how extremely athletic he was. I think he was into sports. He was on sport teams. I think it was basketball or football, one of those teams, baseball, but he was heavy into sports. Okay. And his mom, she magnified the fact that Kadin had this laugh about him that made him distinct from his other siblings. It was a deep laugh. He had to hold his stomach whenever he laughed. Just the little things that, is like an energy signature when it comes to remembering who you are, things of that nature. So I pulled the chart of Kadin's birth. On December 10th, 2003, which is when Kadin was born, the sun was in Sagittarius and the moon was in Gemini. Okay? Sagittarius and Gemini are opposite signs. So this calls for a new moon baby. Y'all know how I divide time. Sun is divided by the moon cycles. So I put the moon in Gemini in Sagittarius' house, which is the 9th house. Okay? So when you put Gemini in the 9th house, this gives you a Libra rising chart. So Kadin was a full moon baby. Full moon babies are very popular. They are full of energy. Their energy is full blossom simply because their chart is set up for opposites. Okay? Opposites bring balance. So in every area of Kadin's life, he represents the opposite energy. So when it comes to home and family, he is the GOAT. Capricorn. He is not a Cancer. Cancer is home and family energy. But however, in the house of home and family, Kadin is a Capricorn. He is a public figure. Okay? So there will be some clashing in his family until he's able to harmonize opposites. Okay? That is the path of full moon babies. They have to balance out opposites if they want life to work in harmony, which is their birthright because Libra is rising, the scales, and Libra represents harmony. Okay? And wherever Venus is at, because Venus rules Libra, wherever Venus is at will represent where this harmony will most likely be the source of this harmony, which will mean the source of the balancing act. Kadin's Venus was in Capricorn, which is in his 4th house of family. So his life was full of balancing acts, especially between his energy and his father's energy, because Capricorn is the father's energy, not the mother's. Okay, Cancer is the mother's energy. However, Kadin had a life full of balancing acts when it comes to his relationship with his dad. So there was a lot of friction going on there. Also, how I know there was friction in the family structure is because Saturn rules Capricorn. Saturn is the coldest planet. It makes us work hard for everything that it touches based on the energy that Saturn is in. And Caden's Saturn is in Cancer, the home and family, where he has Capricorn at. So not only is his Saturn in affecting the home and family, but so is the fact that Kadin is a Capricorn in the family energy. Okay, so he had this cold streak that marked his relationships between him and his family unit. He may have been a very difficult character. You know, he had a hard time becoming vulnerable. The type of vulnerability that brings families together. Everybody's comfortable. Everybody knows how each other feels and this and that. Well, Caden, on the other hand, when you have Capricorn in the fourth house, he was not that type of child. You know, he was more status driven, status oriented. Capricorn represents the public and where we want to go in life once we grow up and leave the family. Okay? And that is the type of nature that Kadin had. It doesn't mean he didn't love his family. It just means that he was status driven. He was goal oriented, meaning he had goals to be grown and to be apart from his family on his own. Okay? He wasn't clingy. Okay, but however, he was only 19 years old, so he was basically still a baby. Okay, so now when Saturn is in Cancer, that lets me know that this character had a very hard time growing up with his family. He had a lot of run-ins with family. He had a hard time adapting to vulnerable energy, which represents Cancer. Vulnerable and emotional energy. This is something that Kadin does not rather not deal with. He rather show you how much he loves you by either doing something for you or achieving something in his life that would make you proud. That is a Capricorn type of person in the family. Rather than all that mushy gushy I love you and hugs and kisses and affections and all of that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that Kadin was not like that. Nobody with Capricorn energy in the home is like that. You know, they are more status driven. You know, they show love by what they do for you, okay? And how they achieve things that make you happy to be their father or happy to be their son, make you happy to be their mother or happy to be their brother or happy to be their sister. It's something that has to do with status. So, the day that Kadin went missing was December 18th, 2022. Okay? On that day, the sun was also in Sagittarius. However, the moon went into Scorpio that evening. Okay? So, most of the answers, if not all, of the story of energy of what took place during this disappearance will be in that chart where the sun is in Sagittarius and the moon is in Scorpio. So that is the chart that I pulled. And when you divide the sun by the moon cycles, you put Scorpio moon in Sagittarius' house, which is the ninth house. When Scorpio is in the ninth house, Pisces is rising. Pisces is the key that we're going to follow first. Why? Because piggybacking off the birth chart, which was the first chart pulled, whatever energy comes first on the day that the victim went missing or died, whatever energy comes first when you formulate that chart will connect the dot from the birth chart. It will let you know. So in Caden's birth chart, Pisces was in his sixth house of work. Okay? It was in his sixth house of work and health. Now, when Pisces is in the sixth house of work and health, it represents the opposite because remember, he's a full moon baby. So full moons are always the opposite energy in a current situation. So When it comes to Kadin being at work, doing his job, taking care of his health, he was the exact opposite, meaning Pisces energy. Okay? Pisces energy is not physically concerned with the physical reality of health. They are spiritually concerned with their health comes from the spiritual source, the psyche, mental health, spiritual health, emotional health, okay? Rather than, the physical activities, physical diet, eating right, exercising to keep your body fit. He was physically fit, but it was because he liked sports. And when the body is always moving around, it's going to naturally become athletically built, okay? So he had a lot of Pisces energy in the house of health. Okay? Meaning he did whatever moved his spirit. And that's what made him healthy. Pisces energy represents fulfilling a divine purpose because that is what makes you healthy. Everything else is going to make you sick. Now, the Pisces type of sickness would represent drugs and alcohol, escape routes, because Pisces already doesn't want to deal with reality. So when Pisces cannot live out its dream, and it has to come to the reality of what the world requires. Do you know what I'm saying? Pisces doesn't want to live in that world. And if they are forced to, then they'd rather have some type of mind altering, mood changing substance to numb that experience. Now, I'm not sure if Kadin did any drugs or mind altering, mood changing substances such as alcohol, or whether he popped pills or whatever his recreational drug activities were. I don't know if he was on drugs or not. However, I do see that Pisces in the sixth house, uh, if he was a toxic individual in a toxic situation, drugs and alcohol will most likely be the route that he would turn to. Okay. And stuff like that involves money. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that this means that he was in a drug, something that has to deal with drugs. I'm not saying that. However, I do see that. Okay, there could be some drugs involved. There could be some transaction involved involving money. Now, Pisces came first. Okay, and Neptune rules Pisces. And Neptune was in Pisces. It was right here in the first house the day that Kadin went missing. However, Kadin's Neptune is in Aquarius, and Aquarius is in the 12th house of the chart of Kadin's disappearance. That represents the individual that is hiding. This was somebody from a team, a group, somebody in his community, an individual. Okay, there was somebody else in the picture that was also responsible for Kadin's disappearance. Now, let's find out who this person is in the picture. Now, let's go to Aquarius's actual house, which is the 11th house. That is the house of the community. And look what you see. Capricorn. That is the father figure. However, this is not Kadin's father figure. Okay, if it was Kadin's father figure, it would have showed up in the 5th house. Okay, in this case, but it showed up in the 11th house. This is another father in the community. Okay, now let's find out what's going on in Kadin's family house, which is the 4th house. You will see Gemini. Gemini represents the neighbor, represents the neighborhood. Okay, the local environment. Okay, and when Gemini is in the house of family, this represents the neighbor's family, not Kadin's family. Are you following me? So the neighbor in the 4th house, their family, is where Kadin was staying at, because Kadin's moon is also in Gemini. So that is where he was living, because the moon rules the 4th house. The moon rules the mother. It rules home and family. Kadin's home in the 4th house was with his neighbors. Okay? Now, in the 11th house, which represents the community of individuals, because in the local neighborhood, you have various individuals. Okay? So in the 11th house, you see Capricorn, which lets me know that this was the father of the neighbor's family. Are you following me? So let's pull a card, okay? Um, I took some notes here. That I want to go over, okay? Because with Pisces rising, money received for a job not done. That's what that can also mean, okay? And it may have been a bet that went unpaid, okay? There's definitely some money involved, okay? Now, his friend's father in the 11th house, where Capricorn is at, okay? And like I said, the neighboring family, because Kadin's moon is in the neighbor's family. And his Venus was in Capricorn. Remember, I told you that was the issue he was having with his father. Venus, a lot of people think that because Venus represents the planet of love and attraction, that it's all good. Okay, attraction is not good or evil, it just is. You attract your enemy just like you attract your friend and your lover. However, the power of attraction, period, is from Venus. That is the Venus in us. That doesn't mean Venus is going to bring you a good person. Okay, Venus will also attract to you your enemy. Okay, so Kadin's Venus was in Capricorn the day he was born, and Venus was in Capricorn the day he disappeared. Okay, so the power of attraction is in the father figure. That is why I'm zooming in on wherever Capricorn is. And Capricorn is in the 11th house of the community. So this is somebody else's father that was attracted to Kadin. And this wasn't in a good way. So I'm going to pull from the planets, okay? Because I pre-shuffled all these decks with Kadin's energy. So he's definitely going to use this card that I'm going to pull to talk to us from this oracle chart, okay? Now, the fact that Capricorn is in Aquarius's house in the 11th house, now you got to look where Aquarius is at, okay? Now, where was the actual individual whose father this was? This individual was in the 12th house hiding. That the 12th house is Pisces house, okay? And guess what's rising first? Pisces. So the friend that Kadin moved in with, the friend's family, that particular friend is the key to Kadin's disappearance. It's a deceptive friend. Okay? That's what I'm seeing. Also, Pluto, which is the energy that rules, that governs deaths of all sorts. Death of a relationship, death of the body, death of the job, death from one situation or circumstance, and the birth of another. When something ends, something also begins. Okay? So that's what Pluto represents. So I always look what Pluto is doing compared to what it was doing at the birth of the victim, and compared and in relationship to what Pluto was doing the day the victim disappeared. Now, Pluto was in Sagittarius when Kadin was born, okay? And Pluto was in Capricorn the day Kadin disappeared. So now, not only are we dealing with the Capricorn in the 11th house, which is the father's friend, which is the friend's father, okay? Venus was also there, and so was Pluto. The planet of attraction and the planet of transformation, transition, which is also death, was also in Capricorn. Okay? Now, there was a travel involved because Kadin's birth, Pluto was in Sagittarius. Now, this travel was with the friend's father. You know how I know that? Because in Capricorn's house, which is the 10th house, you will see Sagittarius. Okay? Now, Sagittarius is inside of the father's house. Whose father's house? the friend's father's house, which is in the 11th. Okay? So that's how I know that Kadin was traveling with the father. That is the foul play that the police was suspecting. And look at that. Mercury in the 10th house. I was getting ready to get to Mercury because guess what else is in Capricorn? Mercury. I was going to get to Mercury because Mercury is the planet of travel. Okay, I just got finished saying they were traveling. Okay, now this travel was supposed to be a long distance travel. Okay, but you got to also look at Mercury to break down the nature of this travel. Okay, so Mercury came out in the 10th house. Mercury is in Capricorn. The day Kadin was born and the day he disappeared. So, Mercury, the planet of travel in Capricorn in the 10th house, will give us an Aries rising chart. Oh, that's the first chart that came out. That is the first house chart. When Aries comes first. This is the chart that Kadin is going to be talking from to give us clues to what happened to him and where we can locate his body. Now, it's ironic because Kadin is a full moon baby. He is the exact opposite of the chart that he pulled, the oracle chart. This is a new moon chart. This is where every energy is at home in its own house. There is no opposites here. Okay, what you see is what you get. Okay, so when Aries is in the first house, that's Aries is that the first house belongs to Aries, and Aries is home. The second house, Taurus, Taurus belongs to the second house, so it's at home. Gemini belongs in the third house, so it's at home, so on and so forth. Okay, whereas Kadin's chart, everything is in its opposite house. So in this new moon chart, Mercury, which is in Capricorn in the 10th house, he was traveling with the friend's father, the local environment. Mercury rules Gemini, but it's in Capricorn. Gemini is at home in the third house, the neighborhood. Okay? They were traveling. Now, the day of the disappearance, where was Sagittarius at? Sagittarius was in the 10th house. Okay? Which was represented this travel. What's going on in Sagittarius's house? So we'll know the nature. Where was this travel taking them to? Well, you see Scorpio, which is the energy of death. Pluto rules Scorpio. Okay? So he was being traveled to his death. It was planned. They knew Kadin was not going to be returning. Wherever they took him to take his life, they knew he would not be coming home. Okay? Because Scorpio is the energy of death in the house of travel. And guess who was responsible for his death? Look inside of Scorpio's house, you will see Libra, which is the partner who he was in partnership with. Venus rules Libra, and Venus is in Capricorn, which is the father. Okay? The friend's father. All right? Now, Saturn rules Capricorn. Okay? So in this oracle chart that was pulled, let's find Saturn. Okay? Because Mercury, we know he was traveling with the father. Saturn, Kadin's Saturn was in Cancer. Okay? Now, Saturn, the day Kadin disappeared, was in Aquarius, which represents the individual, the other individual's father. Remember in Kadin's disappearance chart, Capricorn is in Aquarius's house. That's the community. That is the team, the group, the organization, and the community, whatever. Okay? It represents the other person's, the other family's father. Okay, so he was traveling with the other person's father, and Saturn was in Aquarius. That lets me know that the same issue that he went through with his birth father was discovered and came to the surface with his friend's father. Okay? This Saturn issue, this hardness that Kadin had, he was not easy to loosen up. Okay? He was not easy to loosen up. Saturn is cold. Okay? Saturn is difficult for a father to deal with when the Saturn is governing his son's nature. Saturn will always be a challenge to the father figure, no matter whose father figure it is. Obviously, his father couldn't do it. So Kadin went to another family. And that same issue that his birth father went through, the friend's father was going through. But the friend's father took matters in his own hands that Kadin's own father would not have done. Why? Because that is not Kadin's real father. So being that Kadin's real father didn't want him in that house, that gave the friend's father full responsibility to take matters into his own hands. Because if I can't do that, then you need to go back home to your birth father. And being that you can't do that, you belong to me. That is how that went. This is war. There was a war that took place. Look at that. A dispute, a family dispute in the fourth house. Yep. That is where Saturn is. Kadin Saturn is in Cancer. Remember, I was telling you that fourth house. This is the family. The dispute that took place in the family. There was a dispute. Okay? So, this dispute was with the family that Kadin was staying with, but also there was a dispute going on in his family. Okay? Um, so he was pretty much in dispute with both families. Okay? So let's follow the moon. So we can find out what this dispute was about. Okay? So, because the moon rules Cancer, and Cancer's at home in the fourth house. All right? So the moon, the day Kadin disappeared, was in Scorpio. Okay? This was a dispute that led to death. This dispute triggered death. Somebody literally got it in their heart to say, I'm going to kill this man. Okay? Because the moon led me to the 8th house, which is the house of death. Okay? Which is where the moon was, according to this chart that Kadin pulled. Okay? The moon that day was in Scorpio. And it's in the 8th house. The moon in Scorpio on the day that Kadin went missing, and the missing chart is in the 9th house of travel. Death by travel. Okay? So, this dispute in the 4th house, what was this dispute about? Okay? Because we don't really know what the dispute between Kadin and his birth father was about. So we don't even know what this dispute and how it ties into this to the dispute of Kadin with this current family that he's living with. I think their last name was like the Fowles, something like that. One thing about being an oracle, we pay attention to certain information because we don't need the whole story. Okay, we really just need the person's name. I'm such a high-ranking oracle. All you got to do is tell me the person's name. Okay, and then I'll start pulling cards with that. Okay, because the oracle is not in the cards, the oracle is in the person. And when I tell you I am a high-ranking oracle all by myself, I don't need a deck of cards. The cards is what proves the gift. Okay? It is a spiritual art and craft, which helps me preserve my energy. It preserves the gift. So let's find out what this dispute was about. Because it seemed like no matter where Kadin ended up at, he always ran into disputes. So what was this dispute about, Kadin? Status in the 7th house. Libra. Libra. The day that Kadin, this was about status. And this was the type of status of somebody that was helping Kadin. Now, mind you, this other person's father was helping him. Somehow, Kadin, they had a dispute that triggered the differences in status. As if something transpired in that household that Kadin was in with that other family. And it led over into somebody saying, we're the ones helping you, especially the friend's father. I'm the one helping you, not your birth father. I'm the one helping you. So when I'm the one helping you, things are going to go my way because this is my house. Okay. And you're my responsibility when you're here. Okay. And Kadin, once again, being full of Saturn energy and Capricorn energy with a Venus in Capricorn, and Venus was in Capricorn the day he disappeared, was going to be a natural challenge. Okay. Natural challenge. Because Saturn, the day he was born, in relation to Saturn, the day he disappeared, is directing us back to the friend's father. Okay? And the status thereof. Now, in the missing chart, you see Virgo in the 7th house. That is the help. Okay? He was helping Kadin. What was he helping Kadin with that his father wasn't doing? Remember, Kadin had dreams too. He was very good in sports, something that he loved to do. And how I know this other person's father was helping him achieve what he loved to do was because Leo is in the 6th house of help. Leo is the energy of love. Leo is the energy of fun. Leo is the energy of celebration. Okay? Leo is the energy of recreation. And when it's in the house of work, it represents the energy of someone who's doing what they love to do, making a living, doing what they love to do. The 6th house is Virgo's house. And when Leo is there, this is somebody that works every day doing what they love to do. Okay? And Kadin had a dispute in the home of his friend with the father, the friend's father, about the status. Now, I'm going to pull a crime. I'm going to pull a crime because, of course, there was a crime involved. Okay? Let's pull a crime. This deck, too, was already pre-shuffled, so I don't have to shuffle the hell out this deck like I did the other decks. I didn't even have to shuffle the hell out of the first deck because that deck was already pre-shuffled, too. It's just a habit. When I'm talking, I'm constantly shuffling, but the energy is always working. So no matter where my hand goes, it's going to confirm me being the oracle. So no matter how many times I shuffle it, I can even shuffle it one time. My hand is going to always go to the right card. The magic is in the hands of the oracle. All right, so let's talk about this crime, Kadin. Family. 4th house, religious abuse. Okay. And I was going to say, too, because I'm going to tell you why that's accurate. I know it's accurate, but I'm going to show you why it's accurate. Because the ninth house, remember I was telling you, see Sagittarius in the missing chart, you'll see Sagittarius in the 10th house. Okay, that's where they were traveling. Then you see the ninth house. That's Sagittarius' house. Okay, that's the house of religion. Okay, that is the house of religion. That is the house of churches. That is the house of higher power. Okay, now, whatever triggered this situation to happen with Kadin, okay, uh, it has its roots in religion. Okay, because at the end of the day, you got to realize the world is at war right now because of different religions. You have some people that won't like you because of your race, and that's fine. But you also have some people that won't like you no matter what color you are because of the God you serve. And because of the God that they serve does not line up with the energy that's coming from the God that you serve. Y'all serve two different masters. So y'all are not equally yoked. The energies are not equally yoked. And that's what creates war between countries, between people, between races, and between religions. Our God is bigger than your God, and we're going to a better place than y'all are going, and all of this nonsense. I said it, nonsense. But it's real. It's nonsense, but it's a very real thing. And it's taking real lives. It's creating real war. Okay? And this war took place in the family's home. This dispute was about religion. It was about religion. About religion. Now, let's go to who. We're going to find out who's responsible for Kadin's disappearance. Who played a role in this disappearance? Because all of the dots lead to the friend's father. But we're going to see where the card leads us to. Again, I shuffled the hell out this deck too already, so I don't have to shuffle this too many times. The victim in the first house. Okay. So, the victim in the first house, okay, there's a victim in the first house. Now, in the first house, you'll see Aries. Okay? Now, when it's talking about the victim in this first house, which is Aries, this is the energy of the self. Okay? Now, Kadin might have been a victim. And we don't know if the victim is him, though. Okay? So let's follow Aries to get more clarity on this victim card. Now, Mars was in Pisces, which is the energy of victimhood. That is the Pisces is the victim. Okay? Now, Mars, the day Kadin disappeared, was in Gemini. Okay? So, Gemini is in the third house of travel. This is the neighbor. Okay? Now, the victim might be the friend. Okay? Because Mars is in Pisces, and the day that Kadin disappeared, look what's coming first. Pisces. Remember I told you this individual that is the key to the disappearance is this individual right here. Comes from, this is the individual that's hiding. The father of this individual that's hiding, this is the individual right here. Because this is Pisces house. The 12th house is Pisces house, but Aquarius is there, which represents the community and other people's families. Okay? Now, the individual from this other person's family, the Pisces is rising. Okay? When Pisces is rising, this Capricorn represents the father figure of this individual. So something happened in that house. Something happened between Kadin and the friend that did not line up with the family's culture or beliefs. And that's where everything went left. I'm going to pull from my lost and found, because right now I want to hurry up and end this reading. You're going to look for Kadin, the lost and found, where his body is at, dead or alive. This deck was also shuffled. Yeah, something happened in that household, okay, that Kadin was responsible for. He played a major role in, okay? And the family found out, and they were hiding it, but somehow it got exposed. And the friend's father handled that situation. Something took place. Something definitely took place. Okay? Mars being in Pisces and Neptune is in Aquarius. Yeah. Something definitely took place. So, where is your body? In a building in the 5th house. Now, in the 5th house of the chart that Kadin pulled, that's Leo's house. Okay? Now, in the 5th house of the day he disappeared, you have Cancer there. Okay? You have Cancer there. And the day Kadin was born, Aquarius is there. So his body is in a building. The family that he was staying with, they know what building his body is in. Okay? It is a building that is about a celebration, and it could be a church. I saw that in the beginning of the reading, and I was going to mention that. In fact, I wrote it down. Where is that paper? I wrote it down. I wrote it down that his body might be near a church. Yeah. Okay. So, do you see where I wrote the death? See, I write in bullets. You see where I wrote the death? By a church. Close by a church. You see that? I be writing all over the place, but I know how to read my own writing. Where I have one sentence up here and another sentence down here when it's supposed to be together, and I know what sentence comes first and which read it because I wrote it. So I know how to read my own notes. But I was going to mention that his body can be found close by a church, because the 9th house in Kadin's, the 9th house, which is the house of churches, okay, in Kadin's birth chart is where Gemini is. It's in a local environment. His body's not far from where he was last seen at, okay, and I believe it's close by a church where they have celebrations, okay. It's probably buried on the church property, okay. And the 9th house is where the church is. It is a place of worship. Okay? Sometimes people think that they're doing a justice to their creator by, saying, well, I'm going to take this person's life because they committed a crime that's against the God that I serve, and I'm going to bury this body at the church of the place that I serve, the God that I serve. It's like a sacrifice, saying, here you go, God, I'm bringing you your enemy, the person that violated us, violated what we stand for. People are weird like that. Never underestimate the psyche of especially a religious person when it comes to religious warfare. Okay, because anytime the whole world can go to war, even with 9/11, that was religion based. The source of 9/11 that took place in New York City with the Twin Towers, the source of all of that was religion based. people do things in the name of their God. Even slavery was religion based. So come on now. People are weird like that. People are very weird like that. This is the evidence deck. I already shuffled the hell out this deck before I logged on. So I didn't need to shuffle that too much. Okay, biological evidence in the house of death. Blood, saliva, semen, hair, body fluids, other tissue, clothes, and skin. In the house of death. Okay? So, right, in the house of death, they're going to find things in that vehicle, the father's vehicle, the friend's father. They need to search that home. They need to search the home. They need to search the church property. Somebody in that house is affiliated with a church. Now, also the ninth house. Also, I want to mention, I just seen 50-50. And I'm getting ready to end this video too. Also, the ninth house represents the grandparents. Okay? Because I did see a grandparent. And I believe I wrote that too. I did see a grandparent that I was going to mention. Yep. You see it? Or partners. Right there. Or partner's grandparent. Yep. Partner's grandparent. Okay? Because Kadin's moon in Gemini was in the fourth house of the day he disappeared. Okay? And the day he disappeared, the moon was in Libra, going into Scorpio that evening. Because he was last seen that evening. So that's why we had to follow the Scorpio moon. Because all of the activity leading up to that would have been Libra. Okay? Now, Libra is in the house of death. Okay? But when it goes into Scorpio, now you're going into the grandparents' house. You're going into death by religion. Okay? Scorpio in the ninth house is actually this card that came out in the fourth, religious abuse. This is what the dispute was at home. It was religion based, and that is the source of the death, because Scorpio is the energy of death and it's in the house of religion. Okay? And in the house of death, you see Libra, which is the partner. Okay? Libra is the partner. He had a one-on-one interaction. Somebody else took his life, Kadin's life. And the biological evidence, okay, will be on the person that's responsible, which I believe is the friend's father. There's evidence in that house. The friend's father's car, there is evidence in that vehicle. They're going to find it. Yep, it's going to be blood that shows up somewhere, saliva, semen, hair, body fluids, other tissue, clothes, and skin. Yep, biological evidence. Eighth house is also the house of sexual, in the toxic sense, the rape. You know, you never know. Somebody could have got raped, and the father probably killed. I don't know who this friend was, you know, or how many other people was in that house, whether they were males or females or whatever. But I also can see rape too. Okay, eighth, anything that has to do with the eighth house is about rape as well when it comes to the toxic. Death, toxic deaths, sexual predators, things of that nature. So y'all tell me what y'all think. I think they need to search that church, and they need to search that friend's home, and they need to search all them vehicles at the friend's house. I don't think Kadin's birth father had anything to do with this. You know, I think everything needs to be focused on that friend's house. All the dots connect to that friend's house and the friend's father. So if you'd like a personal reading with me, reach out to me in my email in the link below. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Y'all tell me what y'all think in the comments below. Until then, y'all be blessed.